Welcome everybody to the third of the CVL brown bags for this semester. I hope everyone emerged from the chaos of last week relatively unscathed. I'm sure we'll all have interesting stories to tell each other about the great storm of 2021. Just before I introduce our speaker today, just a couple of reminders. The first is that, as usual, we're inviting you to submit questions to Dr. Park on the chat function at any time during the talk. I will pick these questions up at the end in the Q&A and present them to Dr. Park and moderate. And then once the talk concludes at 1 o'clock, there'll be an opportunity to interact directly with Dr. Park for 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so on a regular Teams meeting. And the link for that will be given to you in the chat during the course of this talk. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. BoKyung Park. She joined us in August of last year, so she has had a somewhat unusual introduction to our institution, in the sense that I think everything that she's done so far has been pretty well virtual. And we're very grateful to her for agreeing to give this presentation today. She received her BA and her MA from Seoul National University in Korea. And then she received her PhD in 2017 from Stanford University. She worked as a postdoc for 3 years at Boston College. And as I said, she joined us in August of last year. And her interests are in social, cultural, and emotional factors that shape moral judgments and decisions, and the neural basis of these phenomena. And she's going to talk to us today about the role of the right temporoparietal junction in processing social prediction errors across relationship contexts. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Park.
Thank you so much for this nice introduction, Michael. And then, hi everyone. Glad to meet you virtually. Okay, so for today, I have prepared like 40 minutes or so presentation on a few studies that I conducted during my postdoc at Boston College. All right, before we begin, I would like to introduce Chris Porco to you. In November 2004, Chris Porco attacked his parents while they were sleeping. He attacked them with an axe, left the room, leaving significant injury to both of them. He was arrested and found guilty for murdering his father and attempting murdering his mother. He currently is serving his sentence. So his mother survived the attack. She lost one eye and got permanent scars, but she survived. She could even make it to the court to testify. And what she said was that she believed her son was innocent. I know this is a super extreme case, but still it makes a very important point. Often we do not change our belief about close others' moral trait, even in the face of very strong counter-evidence. Then what about other less extreme cases? Let's say you found your best friend stealing some money from your wallet. Although you may be very surprised by finding this out, you may want to give your friend the benefit of the doubt and may not completely overturn your judgment about this friend. As many of you may know, this effect is called belief maintenance. And the studies found that this effect is very much manifested in people's judgment about their close others' moral traits. So when it comes to their close others, people are motivated to not update their moral judgment about those close others based on their negative behaviors. While this phenomena has been around in psychology for decades, the precise mechanism that explains this has been understudied, which we tried to address in the current research. All right, we first focused on the computational mechanism. When someone does something we did not expect, we experience prediction error, or PE. It is the discrepancy between the expectation that we had about this person and the actual behavior this person displays. This unexpectedness is critical for updating one's judgment about others, because if a target behaves exactly in the expected ways, there is no need to update one's evaluation about this person. Thus, maintaining one's moral judgment for close others may be accounted for by discounted representation of prediction error signal we experience about those close others. In other words, we may not learn from prediction error signals when it is about our close others. Second, we wanted to examine the neural mechanism, and there were two alternative hypotheses. One possible way to not update your moral judgment about close others or a close friend based on this friend's negative behavior would be by using procedurally rational discounting. Specifically, people can generate auxiliary hypotheses to explain away their friend's behavior, such as your friend who stole money from you might mistake your wallet for hers, or maybe she was reimbursing herself for an expense that she paid on your behalf, which you forgot. Importantly, this process requires effortful process of social information. You first need to process your friend's negative behavior and provide explanations to downplay this behavior in order to not update your moral judgment. This involved active and potentially deliberate information processing. On the other hand, people may simply discount their friends' negative behaviors. Even though they noticed that their friend stole money from their wallet, they may simply believe that it would not be a big deal. Or people can even ignore this behavior. This process does not require effortful information processing. In fact, it requires decreased information processing selectively for close others' negative behaviors. Previous studies found that when people effortfully process social information, they showed increased activity in right temporal parietal junction, or RTPJ. So if increased RT-PJ activity explained smaller changes in moral judgment for close others, that would support effortful discounting. People might be more likely to deliberately process others' behaviors and generate auxiliary hypotheses to explain those behaviors. On the other hand, if decreased RT-PJ activity accounts for smaller changes in moral judgment, that would support effortless discounting. People might be more likely to simply ignore others' negative behaviors. To test these predictions, participants were invited to visit the lab with their same-sex close friend. We made sure that they were actually close and spent enough time together regularly. After 5 minutes that our MRI participant and her or his friend arrived, a same-sex confederate who acted like she or he was another participant in the study also entered the lab, and all three of them received the instruction about the task they were going to do that day as a group, which I will explain in a minute. And then the experimenter escorted the MRI participant to the scanning area and said that she would play the instructed game with her friend and with the stranger that she just met in the lab. Okay, here is the game paradigm. 2 people would play each trial. A participant would play every trial, and her friend, for instance, Sarah, and our confederate, for instance, Emily, would take turns and play half of the trials against the participant. Who would be the game partner in the given trial was indicated at the beginning of the trial for 2 seconds, as in this figure that you are looking at. For each trial, both parties of this game would have $20. I'm sorry. Then participant friend or the stranger would freely determine how much they would like to give to the participant from their $20, or how much they would like to take away from the participant on each trial. Participants were informed that one of the trials would be randomly selected and counted as real, meaning that they would receive the money left for them in the selected trial, and their game partner in the selected trial would also receive the money that she or he kept for herself or himself after giving money to or taking money from the participant. Additionally, participants were also informed that both parties would receive a new $20 in the next trial, so their friend and the stranger would consider different trials independently, meaning that their giving or taking decisions on a given trial should not be influenced by their decisions in the earlier trials. Participants could not do anything about the game partner's decision, but their task was evaluating the partner along with different moral judgment dimensions. So how trustworthy the partner was, or how close they felt to the partner. Which evaluation they would make in the given trial was indicated at the beginning of the trial after seeing who their game partner of this trial would be. because we could not find a lot of differences between these two evaluation tasks, trustworthiness and closeness. For the computational and neural analysis, the data were collapsed across the evaluation tasks. Okay, let's take a look at the participant behavioral responses first. Here, in the upper panel is participant ratings. Their ratings about their friend are in green, and ratings for the stranger are in red. On the x-axis, you can see different conditions. And regardless of the conditions, participants rated their friend more positively. And then more importantly, when we looked at how much people updated their ratings between the trials by subtracting participant ratings in a given trial from their ratings in the previous trial and taking the absolute values, participants did not change their ratings for the friend a lot, meaning that they maintained their positive judgment for a friend across the conditions, even though their friend and the stranger gave and took the same amount of money. So what I have to clarify here is that the participants did not play the game against their real friend and the real stranger, but they observed pre-programmed giving and taking decisions, which were totally balanced between the friend and the stranger conditions. All right, we fitted computational models to explain through what psychological processes participants arrived at these ratings. The model assumed a latent variable, which we call prediction, that participants had regarding how much their friend or the stranger would give to them or take from them. This prediction V was updated in every trial based on the prediction error or the discrepancy between what participants expected this target or partner to give or take and what this partner actually gave or took. We subtracted the expected amount from the actual amount. So if prediction error was positive, that means the target actual behavior was better than what was expected. If the prediction error was negative, that means the target actual behavior was worse than what was expected. These are the components that we were interested in. So the model assumed that people use this prediction to make their ratings, which the model tried to estimate. From the best fitting model, which I will explain soon, we extracted the trial-by-trial prediction error signals. Participants experienced more positive prediction error when the stranger gave money to them, and more negative prediction error when their friend took money from them, which makes sense. However, this does not seem to be consistent with the behavioral ratings. So based on prediction error findings, participants were more negatively surprised by their friend taking behavior, but they still did not change their moral judgment about friend and gave their friend more positive ratings. So how come this could be the case? Let's go back to the model. So actually, we fitted multiple models, and the key difference between them was about this alpha term or the learning rate. As you can see, this scaled the effect of prediction error into the updated prediction about the target. If alpha is very high, close to 1, that means this trial-by-trial prediction error is largely integrated into the prediction about this target in the next trial, meaning that this person learns a lot from the prediction error. In contrast, if alpha is very low, close to 0, that means prediction error is disregarded and this participant does not learn from prediction error signals. The model was the best fit when we assumed that participants learned from giving and taking conditions differently, and more importantly, that they learned from their friend behavior and the stranger's behavior differently. These are the learning rates from the best fitting model. We found that overall, participants showed reduced learning rate in the friend condition, meaning that they disregarded prediction error and didn't learn from it when it was about their friend. Another way to test this would be by looking at the associations between participants' prediction error signals and how much they changed their judgment about the target. So we took the absolute values of both the prediction error and the participant updating in moral judgment. So these are the correlations between the size of these variables. In all conditions, the greater prediction error participants experienced, the more they changed their judgment. But the effect of prediction error on moral judgment updating was smaller in the friend-taking condition compared to all the other conditions. So although participants were more negatively surprised by their friend-taking behaviors, they did not learn from these behaviors and failed to incorporate those into their ratings. Then, are these behavioral findings explained by brain activity? To answer this question, we extracted participant RTPJ activity. Prediction error could occur when participants observed the giving and taking decisions of their friend and the stranger, which we focused for further neural analysis, marked in red in this figure. Okay, first, participants showed overall more reduced activity in the friend condition. This pattern was more pronounced when their friend took money from them, supporting the hypothesis that people might effortlessly discount their friend's negative behaviors. And this was the condition that RTPJ activity significantly tracked the prediction error signals. More reduced RTPJ activity was associated with less negative prediction error signal in the friend-taking condition in the solid green line. Moreover, RTPJ activity was associated with the participants' moral judgment ratings, specifically in this condition. The lower RTPJ they showed, the more positive ratings participants gave to their friend, even though their friend took money from them. Again, supporting the hypothesis that people effortlessly discount their friend's negative behavior instead of effortfully generating auxiliary explanations to downplay friends' bad behavior. So, even though participants were more negatively surprised by their friend taking behaviors, they did not learn from these behaviors. And this underrepresentation of prediction error signal was tracked by decreased RTPJ activity, ultimately contributing to more positive judgments. Now, maybe you are wondering why this is important. So people changed their moral judgment for their friend less based on about an hour of interaction in the scanner. So what? They already know their friend very well, so it totally makes sense that they do not update their judgment because of these limited interactions. So I have some answers to that. First, we had exactly the same question. So we measured the participants' prior knowledge or prior experiences with their friend. So how long they have known each other, how often they communicate with each other, and so on. These indexes never predicted how much participants maintained or changed their moral judgment, suggesting that their maintenance of moral judgment for a friend was not really dependent on their prior knowledge about their friend. Second, our findings provide some preliminary evidence to potentially reject an alternative account. As we suggested earlier, there can be two alternative explanations regarding how people maintain their belief in their friend's moral trait. One is effortful and the other is effortless discounting. We found that, at least in this specific context, people were more likely to engage in effortless discounting of close others' negative behaviors to maintain their moral judgment. Lastly, we found that updating moral judgment for a friend based on these limited interactions was associated with participant real-world relationships. Specifically, if you keep your belief that your friend is a good person, you may be more likely to maintain your friendship with this person. Moreover, if this is a tendency of you regarding your general social relationships, you may have more friends than others, maintaining a broadened social network that can in turn increase social fitness. To test this prediction, we conducted an online survey. Participants were asked to think of their same-sex best friend and read a series of different vignettes in which their friend name was piped in. Participants were asked to read different positive and negative behaviors and imagine that their friend did those behaviors, such as Sarah helped an elderly woman get up from her wheelchair, or Sarah spread rumors about a coworker's work ethic. After each behavior, they made moral evaluation ratings about their friend. Afterwards, participants indicated how many friends they had in real life by choosing one of these categories. Okay, on this graph, x-axis is the category of number of friends participants chose. Y-axis indicates how many participants chose each category. Blue bars indicate participants who never changed their moral judgment about friends. And then brown bars, participants who negatively changed their judgment after imagining their friend doing something bad. As you can see here, the distributions were significantly different. Participants who never changed their impressions were more likely to say they have 20 to 50 friends, while those who negatively changed their moral judgment for friends were most likely to report having 3 to 5 friends. Moreover, we tracked our neuroimaging participants and measured the number of friends they had in their real life. We found that participants who showed more decreased RTPJ activity in response to their friend-taking behaviors, so those who presumably discounted their friends' negative behaviors more, reported that they had more friends. So to summarize so far, we found people protect their moral impression about close others by not learning from the prediction error, supported by decreased RTPJ activity. This may lead to social benefit by helping people to maintain more friendships. However, having a greater number of friends may not be necessarily a good thing. For instance, by maintaining relationships with people who steal from you, you may experience decreased satisfaction in your social relationships compared to people who are more selective and only keep friends who can be objectively good for them. Moreover, people may not choose to maintain their friendship with others who do bad behaviors. Instead, it is possible that these individuals do not have the freedom to initiate new relationships and terminate already existing relationships. This is measured by a concept called relational mobility. Relational mobility means how much freedom and opportunity a society or social context affords individuals to choose and dispose of interpersonal relationships based on personal preferences. This was originally found to be a cultural structure, so more individualistic cultures such as the United States and Western Europe have relatively high relational mobility, while more collectivistic cultures such as East Asia have relatively low relational mobility. However, this can also be used at the individual level to examine how much freedom the individual's immediate society provides regarding choosing and terminating social relationships. We examined whether people's perception of relational mobility can be associated with the quality of their relationships and ultimately their subjective levels of well-being as an index of how successful they are in their social relationships and in their everyday lives. Expanding on previous literature, our hypotheses were that people who perceive high relational mobility in their immediate societies would be more likely to report better quality of relationships. Specifically, In societies that relational mobility is high, or in highly mobile societies, people may experience the threat that their partners or friends may easily leave them. In turn, they may invest more in their relationships to prevent that, which would increase the quality of their social relationships, which may ultimately increase their overall happiness. We conducted a series of different online surveys. We examined participant relationship quality by measuring how much they disclose themselves, by telling one's biggest secret, most embarrassing experiences, and greatest failure to their best friend, romantic partners, or their closest family members, like different targets depending on the specific study. We also measured how close participants felt to their best friend, romantic partners, or the closest family members as another index of participant quality of relationships. Participant overall happiness was additionally measured by a variety of indexes depending on the survey, including satisfaction with life scale, hedonic well-being, such as experiences of positive emotions and subjective happiness, and eudaimonic well-being, such as experiences of personal growth and achievement. Lastly, participant relational mobility was measured by a scale developed in a previous literature. This scale includes questions like they, or the people around you, have many chances to get to know other people, and if they did not like their current groups, they could leave for better ones. Okay, I am going to show you the most representative figure. We found that people who reported high relational mobility were also more likely to report having better quality of relationships. And moreover, better relationship quality was associated with having greater overall well-being. And this also mediated the positive correlations between relational mobility and well-being. In addition, this effect was consistent with different types of well-being. So across different studies, higher relational mobility was always associated with better quality of relationships, which was in turn associated with increased eudaimonic well-being and greater hedonic well-being. Moreover, we predicted that relational mobility measured on the national level may also be associated with people's reported relationship quality in those nations and the overall well-being of the same nations. So from 38 different nations, we retrieved the national level of relational mobility data and the national level of quality of relationship data from datasets built for previous literature. The map you are looking at right now indicates the national level of relational mobility in different nations. The bluish colored represent nations that have relatively lower relational mobility, and reddish colored represent nations that have relatively high relational mobility. We also got the national level of well-being data from the Gallup survey dataset. And then replicating the individual level data, we found that people from nations with higher levels of relational mobility were more likely to report having better relationship qualities, which led to greater national well-being. These effects remained consistent even after controlling for national level of GDP and individualism scores. So overall, people maintain their belief in their close others' moral traits by learning less from their practitioner and effortlessly discount their friends' negative behaviors. People who do this were more likely to report having a greater number of friends, but that does not necessarily guarantee that they have better quality of relationships. Indeed, by using relational mobility data that measures the opportunity people can freely initiate and terminate their relationships, we found that those from societies with high relational mobility reported having better quality of relationships and greater well-being. This may be because feeling the threat that their close others may look for a better alternative relationships made people invest more in their relationships, ultimately increase the quality of it, suggesting that blind belief maintenance may not be the best way to maintain a quality relationship. For our future directions, we are planning to conduct studies providing different conditions in which people are encouraged to engage in effortful discounting of their close others' negative behaviors by making situational explanations of their friends' bad behaviors more accessible. We are also thinking about how relational mobility influences one's moral judgment about others. If you feel you can terminate your relationship anytime, maybe you are more likely to make harsher judgment about your friend and move on to a different friend. On the other hand, maybe you feel more motivated to blame close others when you cannot terminate your relationships because you have to correct your friend's negative behaviors to reduce any lasting negative impact of this friend's behavior on you. We are trying to investigate which of these alternative hypotheses is supported by empirical data. Related to this, another future direction would be that whether people's information processing would be dependent on their perception of the opportunities to terminate their existing relationships. People may be more likely to engage in effortless discounting of their friends' negative behaviors if they think they cannot easily exit from this relationship. In contrast, if people can easily terminate the relationship, but if they are still motivated to maintain the relationship, maybe they engage in more effortful processing to generate auxiliary explanations for their friends' bad behaviors, which would be reflected by differentiated activity of RTPJ. All of these studies that I presented today and a lot of the future research have been conducted with my great collaborators from Boston College Morality Lab and Rutgers University. Let me stop here and I am happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, BoKyung. That's fabulous. Great course. Thank you.
Michael, do you want me to stop sharing the screen, or would it be just okay?
Yeah, let's do that. If people want to see slides, we can bring them back up again. Tremendous. So, yeah, if you could just stop the screen share, that would be great. And we have some questions. Let me go straight to those in the time we have. We have plenty of time. First question we have in the chat box here is from Kendra. I will read it in its full. Great talk, BoKyung. In the first study, what other computational models did you test? And were there individual differences in the best fitting model?
Yeah, that is a great question. And then for the sake of simplicity, I did not really go super deep into these models. But one of the really important factors in this model was that we also compared different models with participant initial ratings of their friend versus stranger. So when they came to the laboratory, we had them rate the trustworthiness and closeness of their friend and the stranger before even begin any part of the study. And then we fed that information to some of the models. And then the best fitting model was actually the one that considered participant initial judgment about their friend and stranger, in addition to having different learning rates. So it is possible that participants who had a stronger belief in their friend before the beginning of the study were more likely to stick to their initial strong beliefs. So that would be one important individual differences which I wanted to raise up if I have questions related to that. So thank you so much for the question.
Great. And a related question here from Rakna Raman. Did you find any gender differences?
Okay, that's a great question. No clear gender differences for neural analysis, I think. And then regarding the behavior ratings, okay, now I can remember. So there was this small tendency that for female participants, the partner was more important. So whether the partner was her friend or the stranger influenced her ratings more, while for male participants, the giving versus taking conditions mattered a little bit more. So whether that partner gave money to them or took money away from them, but those differences were just small, and then still we could find the consistent effect that people updated so much smaller for their friend across all the conditions. But there was, yes, that gender modulation effect.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question here. I'm just going to synopsize it. In effect, it's asking whether would you expect to see the same data if you asked people simply to imagine that the protagonist was a friend, or to imagine that the protagonist was a stranger? Do the effects depend upon the fact that you actually brought a friend with you to the laboratory, and you are essentially, in a sense, thinking that it's your friend who's doing this as opposed to a stranger? Or would this work just as a conceptual exercise?
That's a really interesting point. Let me think. So one of the biggest reason people engage in belief maintenance gotta be that they are motivated to protect their judgment about their friend, right? And then the source of motivation can be different, such that people may want to protect their self-esteem that, okay, I cannot be friends with this bad person. But one of the most important motivation, I think, gotta be that they want to protect their positive images about their friend. And then even though that was not really correlated with our measures such as their initial closeness ratings or how long they spend time together or things like that, but still I think there is this motivation that really contributed to people's belief maintenance. And then to actually build that motivation, I think real friendship should exist there. And then with imaginary like a friendship or just a conceptual like studies, maybe this effect would not be really found because people are not super motivated to attack those friendships.
So, but that it would be an interesting experiment, perhaps, to
to measure like the effect of motivation, right?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. So great. I have a couple of questions, if I may. So, to what degree do you think the mechanism that's underlying social prediction error has parallels with what we know about reward prediction error, which has been studied to death? And in particular, do you think there's any role for that reward circuitry to come into play for social prediction error? And I'm thinking in particular of the role that dopamine may play in signaling prediction error. Do you think that might be the case for these sorts of social situations and the way it is for reward?
That's a really great question. And then, as you know, this concept of social prediction error had its root in reward prediction error, right?
Yeah.
So it's basically the same social prediction error, just add social components there. And then there are other studies that looked at reward prediction error and found the reward like circuitry actually explained people's behavior in response to like similar types of studies, such as like a trust game, or like there are many other studies. And then we tried that. We tried to apply the same model. Actually, one of our collaborators, Dominic Ferrari, who you saw in my last slide, he produced a lot of papers regarding reward prediction error, and then we tried the same model, but that did not really explain participant rating in this specific study. So no, that is a really great question. And then I am not sure of the answer here, because here what was better, like the better fit was the social prediction error and this RTPJ activity, not the reward circuitry. So I think we should like really take a look at like the differences, systematic differences between like these two lines of studies. But yeah,
that's super interesting. Yeah, and just one. This is a really nerdy. I can't resist asking the question, but nothing. It's not a criticism because nothing hangs on this issue with regard to your data or the interpretation. But people in the social cognition field talk about the temporoparietal junction as being this critical lateral parietal area. But actually, it's not the temporoparietal junction, it's the angular gyrus. And I have to say, I sneakily took a look at the coordinates in your paper, and sure enough, it's BA39. It's not BA40 or BA40/21. So I just wonder if you have any idea why there is this cultural tradition in the social cognition literature to talk about the temporoparietal junction, which has very, very different computational properties to the angular gyrus, and actually probably makes a bit of a difference to how you interpret why social factors modulate brain activity in the region.
Okay. Well, first about the change, like the interchangeable use of the term between angular gyrus and temporoparietal junction. So yeah, I mean, as you said, that has been the convention in this field, that we sometimes refer to angular gyrus as temporoparietal junction. But yeah, so that I do not have a really good answer. But I have an answer.
Give you a hard time. I just wanted to make the observation.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, absolutely. But I do have an answer to the second part. So regarding the functional role of like this region, in a lot of social cognition literature, we do localizer tests too. So instead of the scanner, people look at like so you know localizer tab, and then we track that, and then we build a map to extract brain activity from the main experiment based on that activity. So
yeah.
we are using those voxels. So regarding function, we think we are measuring what we want to measure. But yeah, the point regarding the computing term in the field is really interesting, and then I will think more about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I told you it was a nerdy question. So we're just about out of time for the formal proceedings. The timing is run absolutely wonderfully. A couple of things just to say. First and foremost, thanks again for a great presentation, and welcome to UTD. And I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say we can't wait to all be in the same room with you. Second, just a reminder that our next brown bag will be in 2 weeks. It will be Dr. Darryl Worthy from Texas A&M. And third, just to remind people that you should be able to find a link in the chat box if you'd like to join us in a post-talk, what we sometimes call backstage event, when you'll have the opportunity to interact in real time with BoKyung. So with that, let me say goodbye to everybody, and I welcome those who can join us if you can click on the appropriate link, and see you in another room very shortly. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.